A deep-sea diver vanished on a classified mission. No body. No wreckage. No investigation. His family was silenced, and the case was quietly buried. 20 years later, he suddenly surfaced, alive, unchanged, and still wearing the same suit. But before he could tell anyone what really happened below, something came back for him. Before you settle in, like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because stories like this don't stay buried for long. And this one was buried beneath miles of water, silence, and a 20-year lie. What would you do if someone you loved vanished in the deepest part of the ocean? No wreckage, no distress signal, no body. Only a final transmission that cut off mid-sentence? And what would you do if, 2 decades later, that same person walked back into your life, wearing the same dive suit, breathing normally, and looking exactly the way they did the day they disappeared? No scars. No aging. No explanation. Tonight's story is not about a miracle. It's about a case that was officially closed, quietly forgotten, and then violently reopened by something that should not have been possible. A professional deep-sea diver vanished during a classified ocean survey. 20 years passed. Grief hardened into history. And then, without warning, he surfaced. If you're ready to follow one of the most disturbing disappearance and return cases ever recorded, stay with me to the end. Because by the final chapter, you'll understand why the people who brought him back wish they never had. The diver's name was Ronan Hale. At 34, Ronan had already built a reputation few underwater specialists could match. He worked where pressure-crushed steel and light vanished after a few meters. In late September, he was contracted for a privately funded deep-ocean mapping operation off a remote research vessel in the open Atlantic. The mission itself sounded simple. Document a newly discovered trench wall and deploy long-term sensors. But Ronan's dive was different. He was assigned a secondary route, a narrow vertical shaft carved into the rock face, far deeper than the public mission profile described. His partner, surface technician Maribel Cruz, monitored his vitals and audio feed. Everything was normal. Calm breathing. Stable pressure readings. At 2:16 a.m., Ronan's voice cut through the comms. "There's something reflective down here. Not metal. It's moving when I move." Maribel asked him to adjust his light. The camera shook. Then Ronan whispered, barely audible, "The wall isn't stone." That was the final clear sentence ever recorded from him. A burst of static flooded the channel. His location marker blinked once and vanished. No emergency beacon activated. No equipment failure alarm sounded. It was as if Ronan Hale had simply stopped existing. Rescue protocols began immediately. 2 support divers were prepared but never deployed. The depth Ronan had reached exceeded safe human recovery limits. Sending anyone after him would have been a guaranteed death sentence. For 72 hours, the vessel remained on station. Autonomous submersibles scanned the shaft and surrounding trench. They found nothing. No torn cable. No damaged suit fragments. No disturbed sediment. Not even the reflective surface Ronan had described. Official reports listed the incident as a catastrophic equipment malfunction combined with fatal pressure exposure. But the numbers didn't support it. His suit telemetry froze mid-read, not in failure. His oxygen levels had been stable, and the pressure sensors never spiked. What unsettled Maribel most was the audio. When engineers isolated the final 30 seconds of Ronan's transmission, they discovered something else beneath the static. A rhythmic pulse. Slow. Even. Almost identical to a heartbeat. The company quietly sealed the dive logs under contractual confidentiality. Ronan's family received a private apology and a carefully worded settlement. No public press conference. No investigation hearing. Just a single line in a maritime incident registry. Presumed deceased. But no one could explain how a man could vanish inside a rock wall, without leaving a single trace behind. Ronan's sister, Evelyn Hale, refused to accept the conclusion. For years, she filed information requests, contacted former crew members, and searched shipping records connected to the research vessel. Most doors closed before she could knock. The company that funded the dive dissolved within 18 months. Its parent investors restructured. Its documentation vanished behind legal privilege. Even Maribel crews disappeared from public life. By year 5, the case was no longer discussed online. By year 10, Ronan's name was barely indexed in maritime incident databases. And by year 20, Evelyn was the only person still searching. She kept Ronan's dive watch in her kitchen drawer. The watch had been recovered weeks after the disappearance, found drifting far from the site. It still worked. It had stopped recording depth at the exact moment his location marker vanished. Evelyn often wondered if time had stopped for him too. She just never imagined how literal that thought would become. Because on a quiet autumn morning, while standing on a public pier only 5 miles from the original dive zone, a fisherman screamed. Something had surfaced near the pylons. Something wearing a deep-sea suit. And inside that suit was a man who should have been dead for 2 decades. Emergency responders expected a corpse. Instead, they found a breathing human being. Ronan Hale was lifted from the water, fully sealed inside his original dive suit. The outer shell showed no corrosion consistent with 20 years of submersion. The seals were intact. The helmet glass was clear. When the visor was opened, Ronan blinked. He spoke immediately. "Did we finish the scan?" The paramedics froze. Biometric testing later confirmed what no one wanted to believe. It was Ronan. DNA, fingerprints, dental records, all perfect matches. He was still 34. His skin showed no long-term water exposure. His muscle tone reflected active use, not prolonged immobilization. Even the oxygen mixture inside his suit was fresh. Ronan was transported under heavy medical supervision to a private coastal facility. And when doctors asked him how long he believed he had been underwater, he answered calmly, "Maybe an hour. I lost visual on Maribel's signal, but the wall opened and—" He stopped, looked at the doctor, frowned. "Why are you all looking at me like that?" No one told him the truth yet, because none of them could figure out how to explain 20 years that never touched his body. Neurological evaluations showed no trauma. Psychological assessments revealed no confusion, no hallucinations, and no emotional distress. Ronan remembered his childhood, his training, his last meal before the dive. He remembered Maribel's voice in his headset. But his memory ended at the wall. "The surface folded," he explained. "That's the only way I can describe it. Not opened. Folded. Like fabric." Doctors dismissed the phrasing as stress-related metaphor. But the engineering team couldn't ignore something else. Ronan's internal body clock matched the time of his disappearance. His circadian rhythm, hormone cycles, and metabolic patterns suggested no extended interruption. He had not slept for 20 years. He had not aged for 20 years. From a biological standpoint, those years did not exist. When officials finally told him the date, Ronan laughed. He thought it was a test. When they showed him his sister's gray hair on a video call, his laughter collapsed into silence. Evelyn could barely speak. Her brother looked exactly as he had the day she last saw him. And when she asked the only question that mattered, "Where were you, Ronan?" he answered honestly, "I never left the dive." The facility did not belong to a hospital. It belonged to a private security contractor. Ronan was not a patient. He was an asset. After his return, government representatives arrived within hours. The original dive classification, sealed for decades, was quietly reopened. Ronan was moved into a windowless interview suite. Every session was recorded. Every biometric fluctuation was analyzed. They asked him to describe the reflective surface, the folded wall. The moment he lost contact, he struggled to find language. It wasn't a space, he said. It was a condition. He described standing upright despite being submerged. His boots rested on something that felt solid, but yielded slightly, like compressed gel. His suit indicators still displayed ocean pressure, but his body felt none of it. There was no current, no sound, no resistance. He paused, and something was matching my movement. They asked what he meant. He hesitated, then said, "Not copying, aligning." When questioned about other shapes, lights, or structures, Ronan shook his head. There was only one surface, and it knew exactly where I was standing. For the first time since his return, Ronan's heart rate spiked sharply. Not when describing the wall, but when describing himself inside it. Against internal objections, a decision was made. They would return to the site, this time with Ronan guiding remotely. A new unmanned submersible descended into the shaft he had mapped. Ronan watched the feed live. The rock wall appeared solid, textured, unbroken. But when the camera reached the exact coordinates of his disappearance, Ronan leaned forward. "Hold position." The pilot stabilized the drone. Ronan whispered, "Increase illumination." Narrow beam. The focused light hit the wall, and a thin vertical shimmer formed, not on the surface, but inside it. Engineers argued. Compression artifacts. Optical distortion. Ronan shook his head slowly. "That's the fold." They advanced the probe. The moment its sensor arm crossed the shimmer, the signal flatlined. Not disconnected. Not disrupted. Frozen. Every system reading locked at identical values. They pulled the drone back. It emerged intact. No damage. No error codes. But the internal clock on board had stopped. For exactly 34 seconds. The same length as Ronan's original transmission blackout. No one in the room spoke. They had just reproduced the impossible. That night, Evelyn received a call. Ronan was allowed one private conversation per week. This was not scheduled. His voice was lower than usual. "Evie, I didn't tell them everything." She felt her stomach tighten. "There was a moment," he said carefully, "after the wall folded. A moment where I realized I wasn't alone inside it." He explained that the surface did not reflect his suit. It reflected his orientation, his posture, his balance. When I leaned forward, something leaned back. Evelyn asked the question he had avoided. "Did you see it?" "No." "Did you hear it?" "No." "Then how do you know?" Ronan exhaled slowly. "Because I stopped moving." And something else continued. He said it wasn't hostile, not curious, not intelligent in any human sense. It was calibrating. Evelyn barely slept that night. Neither did Ronan. But at exactly 2:16 a.m., the same minute he vanished 20 years earlier, his heart rate surged violently. And every motion sensor in his room triggered at once. Despite Ronan lying perfectly still in bed. Security footage revealed nothing. Ronan never moved. The door never opened. But something had changed. The next morning, his balance tests were flawless, too flawless. He compensated for disturbances before they occurred. When technicians shifted equipment near him, his body adjusted microseconds ahead of physical contact. It looked less like reflex, and more like prediction. Doctors blamed heightened situational awareness. Engineers were less convinced. When Ronan walked down the corridor, his steps matched the facility's vibration patterns exactly. He avoided pressure points in the floor he had never been told about. It was as if his body had synchronized with the building itself. When confronted, Ronan struggled to explain. "I don't feel different," he said. "But I don't feel separate anymore." The final assessment committee convened 2 weeks later. They concluded Ronan presented no immediate threat. Public reintegration was scheduled quietly. Minimal press. Controlled narrative. Medical miracle. Survivor story. No mention of folded walls. No frozen clocks. No shimmering thresholds inside solid stone. Ronan was informed he would be released the following morning. He thanked them politely, and then he asked one question. "Are you still monitoring the site?" They said yes. Ronan closed his eyes. "Then please, don't send anyone else inside it." Ronan never made it to his release briefing. At 2:16 a.m., alarms triggered simultaneously across the facility. Every door sensor along one corridor failed at once. Cameras recorded Ronan stepping out of his room calmly, walking toward the maintenance wing. Not running, not panicking, following a path no one had given him. Security teams arrived too late. They found his clothes folded neatly on the floor, his hospital wristband placed on top, and embedded into the wall beside the service tunnel. A narrow vertical shimmer, not visible on standard cameras. Only when a handheld light was angled directly across the surface. The shimmer pulsed once, then vanished. Ronan Hale was never seen again. But something else happened. 3 days later, monitoring equipment near the original dive shaft registered a brief anomaly. 34 seconds long. Frozen timestamps. And a faint rhythmic signal beneath the static. A heartbeat. Not weakening. Not strengthening. Just perfectly aligned. Exactly as it had been the first time. If this story unsettled you, there's a reason. Cases like Ronan Hale's don't fit neatly into accident reports, medical journals, or missing person databases. They live in the thin space between what we can measure and what quietly measures us back. A man vanished. 20 years passed. And when he returned, time itself seemed to step aside for him. Was it an undiscovered physical phenomenon? A classified experiment buried beneath corporate contracts? Or something far older, waiting in the blind spots of our exploration? The official narrative will always say, equipment failure. But equipment doesn't stop clocks. And walls don't fold. If you believe stories like this deserve deeper investigation, subscribe, share this video, and leave your theory in the comments below. Do you think Ronan was preserved, replaced, or simply adjusted? Because the most disturbing part of this case isn't that he came back unchanged. It's that when he finally left for good, he didn't disappear. He returned to something that had already learned exactly how to hold him.